Sami was born in Bellevue Hospital in 1982. He grew up in Park Slope, Brooklyn, now a family-oriented neighborhood full of progressive politics and multi-million-dollar real estate. It hosts cafes, bookstores, organic food stores, and handmade jewelry stands. Sami's father bought into the area before it went burgoyes. Sami went to high school in a crumbling Gothic structure just beyond Sunset Park before he attended Baruch College, a vertical university in Manhattan, for a year on a baseball scholarship, where he was a catcher. At Baruch, he studied finance, but his first stab at college was uninspiring. He felt lost. School was easy, he said, so easy that he could manage without even going to class. But his grades suffered from his own self-confessed indolence. By the spring of 2001, after the school year had ended, Sami felt empty. He found himself thinking about how he hadn't achieved anything, and how on the weekends he was still asking his mother for money to go out. Is this how it's going to be? He would ask himself, referring to college, like glorified high school. That summer, a Marine recruiter called him at home. The recruiter had his number from two of Sami's high school friends who'd recently enlisted. This is one way that the U.S. Armed Forces fills its ranks, through a network that is essentially a big chain letter. The call caught Sami completely off guard, but it also intrigued him. The man was a professional and could sell the rust off an old bathtub. He talked a lot and promised Sami job skills, money for school, and travel around the world. I wanted to see something else, Sami told me. Bored with life at his parents' house. I wanted to see something else, Sami told me, bored with life at his parents' house. He didn't tell his parents that he was being courted in a well-worn and well-scripted romance. Sami would go and talk to the man in his spare time. He was constantly flattered and promised the moon. He would ask about joining the reserves as a part-timer, and the recruiter assured him that that would be just fine. Whatever Sami wanted, he could have. And Sami had what he later characterized as his moment of insanity. He decided to throw caution and college to the wind and just sign the contract on his own, without consulting his parents and without thinking hard about what he was getting himself into. While the recruiter kept on showing him where to sign. The man had listed Sami as an active duty soldier, 4 years of service and 4 years of inactive duty, and Sami stopped and asked him why. The recruiter smiled. Look, let's just list you as active duty, he says. You can change down to reserves any time you want. That, it turns out, wasn't true. Later that evening, he told his parents. I joined the Marines, he said, after dinner, and his mother blew up. What? Why? She screamed before she started crying. His father sat back stoically. Good, he said. It'll teach you how to be a man. But a week later, Sami started having his own doubts. He called his recruiter. Let me get out of it, he said. You can't, the recruiter told. You can't, the recruiter lied to him. In fact, Sami told me, he could have left, since he still had to sign a second set of contracts at basic training. Until then, the military spent virtually no effort on him, and he would have been able to walk away from his contract without much of a penalty. But, he explained, recruiters routinely draw verbal pictures of stockades and jail to frighten gullible neophytes. He went back to his father and asked him what he should do. The two of them sat down in their living room, and his father put an end to the speculation. A man finishes what he starts, he said. It wasn't the facts of war that scared Sami. It was simply that he wasn't going to be living at home for the first time in his life, that he was entering an unfamiliar world, and, as he puts it to me, the unknown is always scary. He was a teenager, and it was May 2001. To him, the military was about joining a brotherhood, about going through some kind of hellish training, but then there was still some kind of reward. You got to meet foreign girls. What it was barely about was fighting an actual war. Who in his right mind would dare to enter a war with the United States anyway? On May 28, 2001, Sami boarded a bus for Parris Island, South Carolina, where he was enrolled in boot camp. On that same day, On that same day, the New York Times ran front-page stories about the spread of HIV in China and the declining popularity of manual transmission cars. The business section boasted a story about how Rosie O'Donnell had made the bold decision to pose without lipstick and in a hospital gown for the cover of her own magazine. May 28th was also Memorial Day, requiring an obligatory editorial in the paper that recalled how, when the United States had entered World War II, the nation suddenly gleamed with purpose larger than self, larger somehow, even than peace. Less than 4 months before the United States was attacked, war stories were well-meant nostalgia. A gray-haired man dressed an ill-fitting suit weighted down with polished brass medals that were now more than 50 years old.